But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
Bill Higgins has seen the highest highs and the lowest lows, but he's faced it all with a never quit attitude.
You might as well strike out swinging, because you ain't going to hit a home run if you don't swing, and you're not even going to have a chance at it if you don't step up to the plate.
He wants to help you overcome whatever adversity you are dealing with in your own life.
There are no limits to what your dreams can be.
By sharing stories of redemption and strategies on living the best life you can live. Are you looking for some motivation and inspiration to get you on the path to success?
Quitting is a learned behavior, not a natural behavior. Our natural instinct is to not quit. But we learn to quit because people talk us out of our dreams.
You've come to the right place. These are the Comeback Chronicles.
Welcome back to the Comeback Chronicles. Welcome back, comebackers and never quitters. This is Bill Higgins coming to you from my bunker where we are practicing social distancing, quarantining, doing everything we're supposed to be doing to get through this coronavirus epidemic. So the other night, Amy and I watched the Beastie Boys Story on Apple TV Plus. And man, it was really good. We enjoyed it. It was a great show, and that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. First off, with regard to Apple Plus, I don't know if you have Apple Plus TV or if you've used it. It's a streaming service, and it's sort of like Netflix, although what I've kind of noticed about the Apple TV Plus, Apple Plus, I think it's called, is that it seems to be more focused on quality over quantity. There's not a lot of programming on there, but the programming that they have on there is really good quality. We watched a show a couple weeks back called The Servant, which is M. Night Shyamalan production, and we're already looking forward to season 2. We watched all season 1. Almost everything that I've watched on there. Right now we're watching Defending Jacob. Great show. They're not doing it exactly the way Netflix does, where they put out all the episodes at one time. What they're doing is sort of putting out one episode a week. So every Friday there's a new episode of Defending Jacob. If you haven't started yet, you can watch the first 4 episodes right away. But if not, you got to wait each week. So it's just kind of mixing it up a little bit different than Netflix. And the one thing, like I said, I've kind of noticed they seem to be a little more focused on quality over quantity, whereas Netflix seems to put out, a dozen shows a week. Apple seems to, and they really seem to build up too. They'll talk about a show that's coming out, and you get all excited about it, but it's not coming out for another month. Which brings me back to this Beastie Boys thing. I had been seeing the advertisement and the trailers for this for over a month, maybe 2 months. And it came out last week. Amy and I watched it right away, and I'm glad we did. So the reason I think it ties into the Comeback Chronicles podcast is this. The thing about the Beastie Boys, I loved the Beastie Boys when I was a kid. I was introduced to the Beastie Boys around 1985. Fight for Your Right to Party was the big song that was being played on the radio. I bought the album License to Ill. I don't know if you remember it folded out, and you had the big plane on there, big white album with the fold out. It was pretty neat. I bought it at Tower Records on South Street in Philadelphia. I can remember to this day listening to that record over and over again. So this Beastie Boys special will bring you back some nostalgia, from your childhood growing up. But it's also a great story about one of the things that I love to talk about on this show, and that is pursuing your passions. So the Beastie Boys tell their story, and they were 3 kids that grew up in New York, and they just loved to sing and to rap, and they put together a band, but they were really just having fun. They didn't get in this originally to make money or to make a career out of it. They were just doing it to have fun. And that's the greatest thing about pursuing your passions. And when you could turn a passion into a career, a way to make money, you never feel like you have to work. So like I said, I first heard of the Beastie Boys in 1986 and 1985, 1986, somewhere around there. And it's just a big part of my childhood. So I really enjoyed watching this. learning a little bit about the influences that affected the Beastie Boys. Kind of interesting. They were influenced by The Clash, by Run DMC, by Aerosmith. They just had a totally unique and different sound. They didn't want to be pigeonholed. And in fact, when you watch his show, what you'll see is the times where they were most unhappy were when they were trying to conform. They were doing things by the book, doing things the cookie cutter way, you're supposed to make records, the way you're supposed to make music. And they weren't happiest then, but they put out their best work when they were just having fun, when they were just doing what they love to do. I don't know if you're aware of this, but one of the Beastie Boys, Adam Yauch, MCA, he passed away in 2012. So this show is just presented by Mike Diamond, and King Ed Rock. And Adam Horowitz is the King Ed Rock. And one thing I kept waiting for them to talk about, there's always been that rumor that Screech from Saved by the Bell is Mike Diamond's brother. They don't even talk about it in the thing, and obviously that's been disproven many times over, but you may have heard that old myth. I thought they'd at least mention it as a joke, but it didn't come up during the show at all. So like I said, these were just three guys who grew up. They liked singing, they liked rapping, they just liked to have fun. The way they put their music together is they just kind of talked about things that they found funny, and then they put it to music and would sing about it. And the lesson to be learned through all this is just simply this: do what you love. Do what you love. I've made a lot of money in my life at times, and I've been broke at times. And interestingly, no matter whether I was making a lot of money or I was completely broke, I had the same worries, the same struggles, the same financial difficulties. The more money you make, the more you spend, and those problems just become bigger. So you don't focus on making money. What you got to focus on is being happy, pursuing your passion, doing what you love. When I would talk to student groups, this is one of the questions I always ask them is, what do you love to do? When you go home from school today, what is it you're going to do? Some kids would raise their hand and say, I'm going to ride four-wheelers. I'm going to play video games. I'm going to watch movies. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to write. I'm going to draw. Whatever that is, whatever the answer to that question is, what do you do in your spare time? That's your passion. That's what you love. And what you got to do is find a way to make money doing it. Because once you find the answer to that, you never feel like you have to work. And as I watched this Beastie Boys special, and they talked about everything that they did, it really seemed like the only time they felt like they were working was when they were doing things that they weren't loving, when they were following a path that wasn't the design that they wanted, the path that they wanted to be on. So that's what you really got to ask yourself. What is your greatest passion? What do you love to do? Find a way to make money doing it. I've been very lucky in my life. I had a career as a lawyer. I was a prosecutor, and I loved it. I loved everything about my job. I loved what I did. Obviously I've talked about this before. I threw that all away through mistakes that I made, but I'm still able to do things that I love. I love doing this podcast. I'm in sales now, and I love sales. I love going out and meeting new people, talking to new people, making my case to people to convince them that our product is the best and that they should buy our product. It's fun. It's rewarding to me. So I've been fortunate in my life that I've always had work that I enjoyed. Even when I worked at 7-Eleven, I loved the customers. I loved working with people. The people would come in there. I had customers I look forward to seeing every day. I've always been able to pursue my passion, and I cannot stress enough to you that if you get up and dread going to work, you are not pursuing your passion, and you got to do something different. You got to do something different, and don't just chase the money. The money comes when you're doing things you love, because your passion just seeps through. It just becomes evident. So what you really need to do in life is find something that you would do for free if you weren't being paid for it. And just by the very nature of that, you get good at what you're doing. You get better at what you're doing. People love to be around winners. I've said this before. I love watching the best at anything. You show me the best piano player in the world, the best pool player in the world, the best artist in the world, whatever it is, whoever's the best at it, I'll watch them, because I just like people. I like to watch people excelling at their craft. And I think a lot of people feel that way. So when you're good at what you do, business just comes to you, just comes to what you're doing. So that's really the key. So what are you doing in your life, or what could you be doing in your life that is pursuing a passion, and find a way to make money doing it? I always tell the story about a kid in a class that I said, tell me something you love to do. And this kid, he's just going to be a smart ass. He just raises his hand and says, well, I just like to sleep. That's all I like to do. And this kid thought he stumped me, right? So I thought about it, and I challenged him back. I said, well, listen, if you like to sleep, you could sell pillows. You could be the greatest pillow salesman in the world. You could design mattresses. You could talk about, how to get the best night's sleep, how to get the most rest you could possibly get. There's a way to make money, even if your greatest passion in life is just sleeping. So the key is ask yourself what you love to do, find a way to make money doing it. The Beastie Boys would have done what they did for free. There's no question about it. Watching this special, that became clear to me. They loved what they did enough that they would have done it for free. And in fact, they had the most fun when they were not doing this as a career for financial gain. They seemed to have the most fun then, and they were happy. It's a great special. You should check it out. I highly recommend it. And let me know what you think. Let me know if it was rewarding for you as well. But that's what I like to do, is just recommend things to my audience, where you can find motivation, inspiration, and just ways to live the best life you could possibly live. Another thing I just want to update my audience on is this. I have been kind of going back and forth on what I want to do with the old podcast, the Never Quit podcast that I recorded using the Anchor app. More recently, I've been uploading these episodes of the Comeback Chronicles on there. And I kind of decided what I want to do is I'm going to have a little bit of fun with that. I'm going to start recording, shorter 5-minute podcasts on there, just to get a daily dose of inspiration through that Never Quit podcast, and then have a longer, a little more in-depth discussions here on the Comeback Chronicles podcast. I feel like, one day I had this idea, and then I, kind of backed off it, because I said I'm always kind of reinventing and changing and doing things. I have an idea, and then I go in a different direction. And it was kind of bothering me. But then I sat back and thought about it. I said, you know what? First of all, as I've said from the beginning, this is a work in progress. So I'm going to make changes to adjust to see what's working, what's not working. Second of all, as you all know, I'm a big wrestling fan. And I watched a wrestling special the other day about The Rock. And I watched the way The Rock evolved from this kind of goofy character he started out as, Rocky Maivia. And he has grown into what we all love today, The Rock. And along that way, there were multiple transitions of reinvention to find what worked. Now, I'm not going to be as big as The Rock someday, both physically and, in terms of relevance to the world, right? The Rock is about as big as it gets. But it kind of made me realize that it's okay to work through things, to see what works, to see what doesn't, and move along that way. John Cena did the same thing. If you remember when he started, he was just this kind of thug character. And now he's the lovable guy that we watch today. So he had multiple evolutions along the way of what he is, and so many people have. And I just use the wrestling reference because it worked for me. But I'm sure if you look at people who have become a success, where they started and the path along the way, there were a lot of changes that they made. And ultimately, it's clear to me that you just have to not be afraid to make those changes, to make those adjustments, and do those things that you feel you need to do to be a success. So I love what I'm doing. I love the way this podcast is coming together. Like I said, the Comeback Chronicles, a little more longer, a little more in depth, a little more detailed subject matter, put a little more prep time into it. The Never Quit podcast, I'm going to start doing that again on a daily basis, just 5-minute clips. I just had Jay, who is the guy I use with Fiverr, record a new intro for the Never Quit podcast. So if you get a chance, probably in the next day or two, you'll when I start posting those daily motivations on there, you'll check it out. What I really liked about it is there's some sound bites that he used for making the intro to this podcast. And then he used some other sound bites from later episodes in the Never Quit podcast. And what I really liked, I felt I could hear the confidence in my own voice in the newer ones versus the older ones. And then I went back and I listened to the very first podcast that I did and talked about just how nervous I was talking into dead airspace. And I've come a long way there. I get started looking up at my screen right now 15 minutes into this podcast. And when I first started this, I'd get nervous after 4 or 5 minutes that I didn't have anything to say. Now, I'm sure some of you were listening and saying, yeah, dude, I wish you just shut up. You've been babbling too long. But that's kind of the beauty of the podcast model, is that if you don't want to listen, you don't have to. Now, I want people to listen. So I want to grow and make this show something that people want to listen to. But the beauty of the podcast model is that you can just switch and listen to something different. I know for me personally, on different days, I'd like to listen to this podcast. There's about 20 podcasts that I listen to from time to time. But on any given day, I may not be in the mood to listen to this particular one or that particular one. I might be in the mood for something different. So, like I said, that's kind of the beauty of podcasts. You can mix it up. So I hope I'm in the mix. That's all I really hope for, is I hope that I am in the mix of the podcast that you listen to. So let me know what you think of the idea. Let me know what you think of the Beastie Boys special. I've been putting these podcasts on YouTube more and more. My daughter Sarah's been helping me upload those. Billy always likes to sneak in the room when he hears me recording a podcast, get his face in there. You want to say hi to everybody?
Hi.
All right. Say hi to my audience. Anyway, look forward to hearing your feedback. If you like what you hear there, share it with somebody else. Maybe they get some motivation out of it as well. Check out the podcast. Check out the YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, hit the notifications button. Help me grow this thing. And give me ideas on how I can improve it. Because the more feedback I have, the better the show can become. So until I get a chance to address you again, never surrender, never give up, never quit. Remember, tomorrow isn't promised, but today is. Get out there and make the very best of it. Your best days lie ahead of you.
Thanks for listening to the Comeback Chronicles. If Bill has motivated and inspired you today, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share it. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching the Comeback Chronicles. If you want to book Bill as a speaker for your organization, email him at bill@billhigginsjr.net. Hope you'll come back for more inspiration from the Comeback Chronicles.